And that takes us to our first story, all about looking through a partisan lens. When it was Trump and his documents at Mar-a-Lago, the GOP was like, oh, what a raid. Why is the FBI doing this? Oh, he didn't know about these documents. And what's the threat? Well, what's happening here? And besides, he can magically declassify whenever he wants. He just has to think it, like a Harry Potter spell. No big deal. And guess what? I agreed. Not about the magical declassifying, because that's BS. But I didn't see the threat to our national security. Okay? Now with Biden, he's stealing secrets to make money with his son. Again, I don't see the threat. I see a distraction. So what am I missing? Except another political gotcha game that gets us nowhere and distracts from the business that could change your life for the better. Now, my first guest says Biden's classified documents are a huge gift to Donald Trump. And I want him to make the case, but that's still just politics. What is the threat to our national security? John Bolton, former national security advisor, former U.S. ambassador to the UN. Good to have you here, Mr. Ambassador. You ready to say you're running for president?
Not yet, but I'll keep you in mind, that's for sure.
All right, so help me on the national security side. I'm not going to question your expertise here, that's for sure. I don't see the threat that Trump posed by having these documents. I don't think he took the documents. I don't think he picked the documents. I don't think he knew where they were. I think he played hardball because that's what he does. And with Biden, same thing. Yes, they go back a lot farther. Yes, there's more possibility of usage, but I just don't see the national security threat to justify the hype. What am I missing?
Well, I don't think anybody who hasn't seen the documents can make a clear assessment of it, and that's one of the things that is underway with respect to the Trump documents, to try and get some assessment how sensitive they are, how damaging they could be, and I think the same thing should be done to the Biden documents. Some of them may have been declassified. Some of them may have been declassified subsequently. They have to determine who had access, what the conditions were. There's a lot of work that has to go on here. The main point, though, is it's not just about these two individuals. It's about the thousands of people in the government who have security clearances and handle documents like that. If they are not sensitive to the risks involved, we're going to get a lot more dispersion of classified documents and a lot more damage. And this really is the power of example. If a former president and a former vice president aren't careful with classified information, what is the lesson that teaches? So I think this is important to teach us the significance of being careless with these documents. And I hope the government, for example, does something in the transition out process for presidents and vice presidents to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know much better than us, and I don't want to bore the audience, but classified can mean a lot of different things. There are a lot of different levels. I have to believe if they had found something in the Trump trove that was really frightening, we would have heard about it. And I think the same thing with Biden. Bad news travels fast, Mr. Ambassador, and that's why I say it. I don't want to play fast and loose with our national security, but, you know, I smell hype here, and it smells pretty strong. Now, that's on the policy side. On the political side, I totally feel you. What do you think Biden's travails with these documents could mean in the upcoming primaries and election?
Well, this is primarily, I think, a self-inflicted wound by Biden. He doesn't have as many documents as Trump. He didn't resist the Department of Justice. I think they outsmarted themselves. But the fundamental point, I think, to most voters is both these men have documents that they shouldn't have in their personal possession. And the equivalence is easy to understand. And in fact, I think you saw yesterday on the talk shows, senior Democrats, Dick Durbin of Illinois, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, expressing what I suspect is a pretty common Democratic view, that this is very, very bad for Biden and for the party. It's a gift to Trump. It was always going to be a hard decision for the Justice Department whether to prosecute him. Look, we live under one rule of law, but the fact is, if you were to indict a former president and fail to convict him in the current environment, it would be a disaster for the Justice Department. There's a long-standing department policy not to prosecute sitting presidents. So can you imagine now going after Trump but not going after Biden? I just don't see it.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.